This episode is going to feature some content from one of our past Church Advance Hours of Encouragement. Bryan hosts these about once a month, and they are a completely free opportunity for you to learn and connect with other church leaders and pastors. During these hours, Bryan gives a little bit of teaching, he answers some question, opens it up for discussion, and then has an opportunity very often for you to pray. It's a completely free virtual event, and you can sign up for the next one by going to bryansams.com and signing up for the next hour of encouragement. We really hope that you will join us for the next one. Again, head over to bryansams.com to make sure that you're a part of the next hour of encouragement with Church Advance. Well, we are glad to have you join us for this episode as we continue to advance a reformation, a fellowship, partnership, and gospel hope amongst Bible-believing pastors and churches. This is Church Advance with Bryan Sams.
You should not join this church if you are not willing to do the following things: give, serve, and connect. Give, serve, and connect. And I on the handout, I actually give them a handout with a QR code where they can scan it right on their phone, and it takes you a link to our small groups where you can connect. It takes you a link to giving, and it takes you a link to the teams, our service points. So, and you know what? I'm not afraid to say that, man. Because here's the thing: if you're not ready to give, serve, and connect, you're going to be a pain in my butt, man. That's the bottom line. You're not going to be a healthy, thriving church member. So why go through the formality? Okay. And I'm telling you on the front end, and don't be afraid to do this. Tell them on the front end, you should give, you should serve, and you should be a part of a group. And if not, then go. And I even tell them, go find somewhere where you feel comfortable doing those things. And so I've tried to like funnel our members a little bit better. And I think the last, Aaron's been, I keep looking at Aaron. Aaron's been focused on Mayport, but I have found the last 10 months to be the most fruitful months of membership. I've received the best members, the highest quality, and they immediately engage. They're giving, they're serving, they're in groups. We gained 40 members in the fall of 2000 and 40 or 50, I can't remember, in the fall of 2022. We've already got almost 20 in the spring of 2000, and it actually might be more now. And so, we're seeing, we're talking about growing by 70, 80 people in membership from last August. It's when Aaron left. When Aaron left, God's blessing came, man. But anyways, no, I'm just kidding. All right, anybody want to take a swing at any membership related things? Because I don't want to skip what you might want to talk about, but that's a short, synopsis of what we do and how we do it and why we do it. Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
I agree and appreciate what you said about not wanting just anybody to join. When I first got to my church, I was like, any breathing body in the auditorium was a blessing. But now it's like I've realized, not just because someone's coming does not mean I want them in our church, and I'd rather get that over with sooner than later. Like, I don't want them to join and cause problems later. So I appreciate that perspective, because something I've learned.
I think we all, for the most part, come from a world where numbers is the only thing that matters. Or it seems to be. That's probably unfair. It seems to be all that matters because it's all we ever talk about. And I remember hearing somebody say one time, sometimes we're more concerned with how many people are there than how are those people doing. Are we here to build disciples, or are we here to build a crowd? It's a paradigm thing. Like I was talking off the air with Zach earlier about the difference between an attractional ministry and a missional ministry. We are very intentionally missional. And if you want to read about the differences between the two, read Larry Osborne's book on Sticky Church, Sticky Teams. And again, I'm not modeling what I do after him, but that thought, attractional versus missional. It's a different strategy. One's short-term, one's long-term, one's crowd-based, one's disciple-based. There's, you know, it's two different models. And I feel like River City now in year 7, it's all catching up with us now. The missional-based model is now steamrolling, and you're starting to see it pick up traction and pick up energy. And from every metric you would want to go on, seeing some extraordinary spiritual and numerical growth and financial growth and all the things come with it. So, but it's not because we did it overnight. We didn't grow by 300 people every year. We didn't start with 700 and a core team of 50. We started with 50 and a core team of me and Aaron. That was our core team, which I'm thankful for. I mean, if Aaron wasn't here, we would have been much worse shape. But we didn't have a core team. We didn't have the luxury of doing all that. We just went. And so, yeah, you gotta be careful here, guys. All right, let me jump to the next one. Yeah, let me give you a couple of, like, I would just call them easy ones. What some of these, and guys, what these are questions that have either come into me directly in an email or they were submitted at our conference, the one in February, but I just couldn't get to it for one reason or the other. So let me give you a couple like softball ones. Number 2, what is a scriptural precedent for or against an evening worship service? And the answer is simple. There's just not one. So I know people want to make an issue of things like, we're supposed to be meeting all the more. So they'll say, if you take away a Sunday night church, you're taking away, one of the meetings. And I just don't think that's really what's happening. Not to mention, if you get real literal about it, you're going to be going to church a lot more than just Sunday morning and Sunday night. We all know that Sunday evening services were created basically for shift workers in industrial or agricultural settings. So in its origin, that's why it developed into where you do 3 different services for the same people, basically. And that's okay. I mean, if you want to do that, obviously I love church. Okay, but I don't think anybody can say there's a scriptural precedent for assembling more regularly during the week. So, I mean, follow the logic of Hebrews 10, right? So much the more as you see the day approaching. So if we were doing Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night 100 years ago, shouldn't we be adding Thursday night by now? So much the more, right? Like the day's approaching. We're further down the road here. Why are we not meeting more? And how do you quantify that? And how does that end? Okay. I think the better way to look at church services is purpose. Purpose. Is your church fulfilling its purpose? What are the main purposes of the church? Worship. Okay. Bible teaching. I mean, it's all in Acts 2. Worship, Bible teaching, fellowship, evangelism. So don't ask yourself, how many church services are we having? Ask yourself, what are we doing? Okay, are we worshiping? Yes, we have a great worship service. Is the Bible being preached? Yes, the Bible's being preached. Is there fellowship? Yes. Is there evangelism? Yes. That's all happening at River City Baptist Church, and it's happening in this model. Sunday morning worship, no Sunday evening worship, connection groups. That's the model. Okay. Now, I am wrestling with something right now, and this is just kind of fresh wrestling for me. I don't think I've even brought Aaron on the loop on this, but so I've struggled. He would know this. I've struggled for years about having one Sunday morning service and having consistent children's workers and nursery workers, and some people like get stuck. They get stuck in there all the time, and all this kind of thing. So I've pretty well become convinced that I'm going to add a second brief Sunday morning service for workers. And then keep consistent workers in our nurseries and children's ministry. And I've got a team being assembled right now for it, and they're ready for it. They want it. I got the idea from a guy who's getting ready to join our church. He's got a lot of experience in ministry, was a missionary for a while, and been a student pastor and done some other things in a few of the churches that he's been involved with, like launches. They started with 2 services, but the 2 services were one for the workers and one for everybody else. And I just, man, it's caught on to me. It's a way for me to still ensure that people are receiving a worship service, but also getting to serve. And I'm finding there's a lot of, and this is just a whole nother discussion, but there's a lot of people out there that would tell you that consistency with workers, particularly above nursery age, talking about like 3 years old and on, is a real plus for families when they come to church. And the kids get used to they have a teacher, just like they go to school. When they go to school, they don't have a new teacher every week. So I've really kind of bought into this, and I was like, there's no biblical thing here. It's just something that I'm kind of buying into. And so when Stephen comes, more than likely within just a few weeks of him being here, we will launch that second service. It'll be much more abbreviated. It'll be more of an acoustic, simple worship set with preaching, probably 30 people, may never be more than 30 people. And just then they launch, and then we go to church. So anyways, those are some of the ways that I'm wrestling through. The only reason I would ever have a Sunday night service now is if I decided to add the same service again on Sunday night for any number of reasons. If I felt like I had enough people that couldn't make it to Sunday morning, but they would much rather come Sunday night, then I might add that. But I'm not just adding another worship service just because I feel like we're supposed to be worshiping more than we already do. So let me give you one more. This is another softball one. This will be number 3. What do you think the deciding factor or factors are on how a pastor should dress when he preaches? It's a good question, man. It's a question that comes up a lot. I think people make too big of a deal of it, honestly, but I do think it matters. I mean, obviously, I think it matters to some degree. Because there are certain things that I wear and there are certain things that I wouldn't wear. I mean, I'm not ready to wear shorts and flip-flops. Some guys might be, but I'm not, but I don't know that I have a really great reason why, other than it's just not what I'm comfortable with. So I would tell you there are probably 2 or 3 guiding factors. Okay. Climate. Number 1, climate. Guys, I live in Florida. Okay. I'm sorry. It's just a great place to be. Okay. So if you live in New Hampshire or Connecticut, Zach, I'm sorry, dude. I'm sorry that you live there. I'm sorry for you. I feel bad about the situation, but I live in Florida, so I don't need to dress up in heavy clothing. Even if I were going to wear a suit, which I wouldn't, but if I were going to wear a suit, I would be wearing a kind of suit that would be styled to Florida weather, because it's brutal here in the summer and you are torturing yourself. Every long sleeve shirt I own is some kind of breathable, Climacool. Nautica and Michael Strahan make a dress shirt that is that material. So that's the only shirts I own. Because I just can't do it, man. I sweat like crazy anyways. It's just uncomfortable. So that's 1, climate. Okay. Number 2 is culture. There and that would be context. Culture/context. Guys, if I walked into a church that was this was their culture, I may change it in time if I feel led to do it, but I'm not going to just come in and try to break the back of the culture automatically. Like the pastor's been wearing a suit for 50 years and I come on the first Sunday and I'm wearing an Aloha shirt just because I can. I think that's immature. I think that the culture, there are cultures and groups of people where dressing up looks more like a suit and a tie. It's not our culture. Dude, I'm in Jacksonville. I'm in Florida. I'm in the middle of inner city. I'm in inner city work, blue collar to the T, man. I am in an absolute blue collar community. Nobody wears a suit for any reason whatsoever. So I'm not gonna, it's not the culture. It's not the context. But you might be in a more professional place where a sport coat and a button-up shirt is just far more appropriate. Great, do it, man, no problem. You might be in a tie scenario. That's totally fine. If you start a church, I would recommend not starting in a tie, okay? Because then you're gonna have a hill to climb unnecessarily over something that's just stupid, okay? Now, you say, well, what if I run off, an IFB person? Look, I mean, guys, respectfully, my goal in life is not to attract independent fundamental Baptist people to my church. Like, that's not the goal. My goal is to evangelize people, okay, and disciple people. Yeah, I know. I mean, I'm terrible. I get it, but the only independent Baptist people that come to my church are coming because they don't want to be independent Baptists. Okay, that's now yours might be different. Okay, but the only people that ever come to my church like that are like running. They're not running to it; they're running from it. And we don't even get a lot of those anymore. Rarely ever, unless somebody like, relocates or something like that, which is completely fine. So that's and then the third thing's conscience. Guys, you dress according to your conscience, man. You wear what you feel like God wants you to wear. That's what you do. If you feel like I really am serving the Lord best by wearing a suit, please, man, by all means, wear it. Great. I feel very comfortable in a pair of jeans and a button-up shirt. That's just what I wear. I'm not saying you should. I'm not saying you have to. I'm not saying you won't reach people if you do, because that's a bunch of poo. Here's the bottom line, guys. It doesn't matter what you wear. What you wear to preach is not going to hinder somebody, and it's not going to help somebody. Okay. It's just not. I'm sorry. I've never in my life met one person who said, man, I just can't believe you don't wear a suit when you preach. I'm not coming back. Never. And I've never seen anybody, because I've wore a suit occasionally, maybe at a funeral or a funeral. But I've never had somebody go, oh, we just could never go to a church where a person wears a suit. By the way, same thing is true of translations. And I know I'm like Mr. Translation talk here, but here's the bottom line. I have never had anybody come to our church and say, you use the King James, that's just too much for us. That was for the first 4 years we used the King James, and now we don't. And I've conversely never had somebody walk in here and say, oh, we couldn't come to your church for this reason. Now they might call us ahead of time, email us ahead of time and ask us. That happens sometimes. But those are man, those are like, I think culture, I think climate, and I think conscience are going to be the thing that dictate those things. So on that subject of dress or additional church services, anybody got a comment or question there? And I'm probably going to park it there, because the other two would take me, I think, a little longer to dive into. So anybody got a comment or question on that? Yeah, Stephen.
Yeah, so dealing with those kind of issues, like what are when you preach and things like that, those are questions that I took care of when I was having conversations with the church before I got here. What are your expectations? Even down to office hours. What are your expectations for office hours for the pastor? And what's the culture been? What do you want to see? And we had conversations about that, where we were going to go.
Great advice to anybody on this call who would ever take a church. Great advice. And that is, ask more questions than you are asked. Okay. If it's important to you, get it out there. Great point about office culture. Do they expect their pastor to be in the office all day long? If they do, and you got to deal with that. Is there an expectation for translation? Is there an expectation on dress and pulpit? All those things. Now, the way I handled that was our church was begging me to come because they wanted to grow. That's all they said. We want to grow, preacher. We're dying. We want to grow. We're going to go. So this is the question I asked. Is there anything you are unwilling to do in order to grow? Like, is there any place where you just go, that's a line we're not going to cross? That let me know what was important to them. Okay. And we've crossed both of those lines since. Now, again, and I know I got a critic, because there's some people that listen to this podcast just to criticize. So let me just be clear for all you clowns that don't understand this. Okay. All those things changed after people that would have asked of those things at the beginning were gone. So it's not like people are like, you get in there, you hostility, you and hostility took over that church and you robbed people their church and all this sort of thing. And it's just not true. So I honored those things. They said we don't want a rock concert, which we don't have a rock concert anyways, but we don't want a rock concert and we want to keep the King James Bible. Sure, great. By the time all those things changed, those were no longer discussions. So I'm not going to hold myself to an issue that was related to people that don't go to church anymore. Once that was gone, I was able to do more of whatever, whatever's willing to do. And at those times I was willing to agree to that, and I did. And so I didn't change translations for 4 years at the church. So actually 5 years. Yeah, that's a great point, Stephen. Yeah, good, man. Just know your context. And look, man, God, be honest. And on another note, don't be so desperate to get to a place or take a new ministry job that you're willing to capitulate to something that you're not comfortable with, because then you're just gonna be fighting a battle. And that's just a battle you don't need to fight. So I would highly recommend that.
It was great to have you join us for this episode. And if you want to make sure that you don't miss any upcoming content, you're going to want to make sure that you're subscribed to our YouTube channel and that you follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you enjoy this content, then please don't hesitate to leave us that 5-star review, and then also tell other church leaders and pastors about this podcast. We would really appreciate you helping us spread the word. This podcast is hosted by Bryan Sams. It's produced by myself, Luke Clayton, and my team at mustincrease.com. We really look forward to having you join us in the next episode as we continue to advance a reformation, a fellowship, partnership, and gospel hope amongst Bible-believing pastored churches right here on Church Advance with Bryan Sams.